All right, I think John and I have decided that we're going to kind of punt on this podcast today. And the reason we're going to punt on the podcast is that hopefully Friday's podcast will be a little bit better. Welcome in. It is section 1904. It is a Thursday. John and I actually do have to pick up the pace on this podcast. The schedule this morning has been quite crowded. It is not easy waking up, trying to track down all the U.S. men's national team drama, build together a podcast, figure out some SDFC stuff, and then we have a Reddit AMA coming up here in a little bit. This podcast will be posted after the Reddit AMA starts, so not enough for us to get into. We'll recap it tomorrow. But John, are you ready to punt with me? Is that the way the broadcast is going to go?
Look, buddy, I'm in one of the toughest 2-day stretches of my entire year. It is the period between when my daughter's school has ended, but before all the summer school and summer camps have begun. My wife has a full day of meetings. She's at an office somewhere, so I'm doing this podcast with a child in the other room attempting to entertain herself. So as much punting as we can do, I'm good with. I don't know if we're gonna have time to talk about the U.S. men's national team thing. So I just have a question for you, because every time I and you're obviously way more dug in on this than I am. Every time I see it, it's like player X or coach X associated with the U.S. men's national team basically telling Landon Donovan to go fuck himself. Isn't that weird? Like, should we be complimenting him for being a true podcaster and just getting everyone to hate him right away?
Well, this is what I've dealt with this morning. And I will say that I haven't gone as far as I might a little later on today. But I woke up and I saw Tim Howard, who is Landon's co-host on the podcast. What is it called? Undisputed? Maybe. Something like that. It's one of those kind of dramatic words.
I thought it was
undisputed.
Unfiltered soccer.
We're unfiltered. So a good podcast from everything I gather.
It is.
And not that I've ever started it from, or finished it from start to finish, but I've seen a lot of clips and it looks good. It looks engaging. And obviously these are two people that I like professionally and personally. But I woke up and I saw Tim, and he was trying to explain something that happened with Christian Pulisic and some DMing, and here's my phone number and you should call me. And there's been some backlash because Christian Pulisic's dad went on Instagram and said something. And then, oh, by the way, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So this is something new. And then before I could even figure out what it was that I was looking at, I see that Christian Pulisic went on the Galazzo channel and he did an interview with Jimmy Conrad and some others. So I'm like, I don't have fucking time for this. I don't. And honestly, I don't even know that it's worth it. I don't, I just don't even, this is way too much drama for what the U.S. men's national team actually fucking is.
Yeah.
And that is a fact. As somebody who is a fan of the team, this is too much drama for what you guys actually are. So why don't you all fucking tone it down a little bit and figure it the fuck out off air, off camera, off microphone.
Well, and the story I saw, it was from some player who I barely recognized the name, so obviously not like a legend in the U.S. men's national team, but a current player saying like, all this stuff that's going on, that's just noise coming from outside, and we're ignoring all of that. And like, people write a story about this. I saw a story about this on The Athletic. I almost linked to it in the newsletter this morning, and I was like, if you take a step back, you realize that there's really only two things he can answer there. Like, they're asking him a question. How do you feel about this? You got three options. A, no comment. B, fuck Landon Donovan and Tim Howard. Or C, that's all noise and we're not paying attention to it. Like, this is not news, but it's news that the team under new leadership, or at least a new manager, is feuding with the legends, the only real legends that the team has in its history. It's insane.
But they're feuding because they feel like this player isn't committed.
I know.
And he's their best player and they need him.
I know.
And then he came out today and he actually said something that was revealing. He said that he offered to play the friendlies against Turkey and Switzerland, and the coaching staff said no to Christian Pulisic. And now I'm like, wait, what? Like, what? And then now I'm trying to think like, well, well, okay, they only want one roster because you're starting the Gold Cup on Sunday against Trinidad and Tobago, so maybe that makes a little bit of sense. But now you're saying no to Christian Pulisic, and how does this make Maurizio Pochettino look? You know what
The
I'm
World
saying?
Cup is in a year. You got to figure out like if they can play together with their best player.
And Pulisic's like, well, then I'd have to commit to 8 games. I have to play 8 more games, but instead I need to get ready for the season. And listen, I talked to somebody recently who knows, who's been around Christian Pulisic a little bit. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. He's like, yo, let me just tell you something. This guy is not partying in Ibiza. But he's not partying. That's not what Pulisic does. He's not a guy, like, I don't even think he doesn't drink. So, he's not out there just like partying and stuff like that. He's a pretty straight-laced kid, pretty serious guy. Has a little bit of a goofy side. But he's like, if other guys chose to just blow off this summer, maybe you'd say, I don't even know if I want to be around that player. But he's like, well, Christian, he's going to be all in when he's all in. So if he needs a little bit of time to get his body and his mind right, yeah, I understand that there's some complications with that. And we'll try to hold it up and we'll compare it to other players in other countries. But it's not like it's unprecedented where some other players have decided to take a little bit of a break, Landon Donovan included. By the way, right. I'm not trying to say that he's Lionel Messi, but, Lionel Messi retired from the Argentina national team. So other players have taken a bit of a break. So, I don't love it. I don't. Anyway, why am I talking about this?
I don't know.
This is just the aggravation of being a U.S. fan. I'm like, guys, you don't deliver in a way that actually justifies this kind of drama. So, fucking figure it out, man. Like, why do I have to wake up to this bullshit? All right, Padres and Dodgers. Let's move on. Let's talk about something else. So, I can't even keep tabs on this, and like everybody has their PR out at the same time. Tim Howard, who I absolutely love, sitting there, he's like, oh, man, I told him he used my phone number. He used my... all right, enough. All right, Padres lose the series to the LA Dodgers, and they end up losing the third game of the series 5-2. And it was a Teoscar Hernandez home run that was the difference. And I suppose there's some ways that we can talk about the game, although we have vowed never to be a post-game show.
Right.
I don't know that we should spend a ton of time talking about some of the moments in the game, whether it's Randy Vasquez or whether it's bases loaded for Fernando Tatis Jr. in the second inning, or whether it's bases loaded 3-0 count for Manny Machado a little later in the game, or other things that might have happened, or Adrian Morejon, or whatever. But Padres, after winning a laugher on Tuesday night, ended up dropping the third game of a 3-game series. John, let me just start with something that's probably not on many people's radar screens. I did post this in the Discord, and I will admit that this was a seed planted in my brain by somebody who's worked in baseball for a really long time. Something I hadn't considered, which is, why was this a day game? Why was this game played at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon? Both teams are off on Thursday. Yeah. Padres are traveling to Arizona. Dodgers are going back home to play the San Francisco Giants. Why was this why wasn't this a night game? This should have been a night game. I know it's not the most important thing. It just was an interesting point that was raised to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not something that I was really thinking about too much, but I do. Yesterday when I went to go turn this game on, I was like, I don't understand. It's Dodgers Padres. Why wouldn't you want like primetime national stage? And then I was kind of, to get there, I had to go through all the games that had already started, and I was like, oh, I guess just like everyone plays in the afternoon on Wednesdays most of the time, I guess. I don't know. Like it did seem a little weird. It also seemed a little weird that the Dodgers are like apparently going through the season now with like 2 healthy starting pitchers and just figuring it out, which makes like this game specifically gave me real 2024 playoff series against the Dodgers vibes, where you're like, well, we should have the advantage here. They don't even really have a starting pitcher. And then you get to the end of the game and it's like, fuck, we can't hit. So I don't know why it was a day game, but I know it was a disappointing game.
It was, and there's a national window that's open up on television as well. Now, with the benefit of a little bit of hindsight, how much credit, if at all, do you want to give the Dodgers for their approach on Tuesday night to winning Game 3, which ends up winning them the series?
I didn't understand this at all. Like, I just didn't. I get that they threw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pitchers. wow, really? 8 pitchers? I get that they had 8 pitchers, but like, did you really need to just like throw the game so that, Kirby Yates could come in and throw 3 pitches, or Banda could come in and throw 6, or Lou Trevino could come in to throw 10 pitches and get the win? By the way, stupidest rule in baseball. Kasperius, whatever his name is, he's the only guy who throws more than an inning for the Dodgers. The only one. He throws 4 innings to start off the game, and he's the only pitcher who doesn't get any sort of stats out of this. Everyone else either gets a win, a hold, or a save, and the only guy who throws more than an inning gets nothing except for, some innings and some runs and some hits and walks against him. So, I don't know. I feel like they could have done this without throwing the game before. What about you?
Well, okay. Again, smart baseball person who I think might be listening. I will just say, and maybe at some point we get this person to come out of their shell a little bit. Sent me a text. We're on a little bit of a group chat here. Some baseball folk. Says, I'm trying to wrap my head around the Dodgers' use of Kike Hernandez. He enters the game in the bottom of the 6th, right? We're talking about Tuesday.
Yeah.
Which is as close to forfeiting a game as a team can do.
Right.
As early as it's ever happened since teams began this mop-up practice. To me, and again, this is somebody who's worked for years in baseball, Dodgers are content to punt on 10 to 15 games per season, knowing it's not worth the resources to chase an unlikely win. They'd rather be able to just go all in on 150 or so games, feeling confident that they're going to win at least 67% of them. And I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting. Like, maybe this wasn't just an isolated Tuesday night based on circumstances in San Diego, but maybe this is actually something that the Dodgers have considered, that they're just going to decide, listen, like, let's not burn a bunch of fuel over a long baseball season. And with our goal being an even longer postseason now than it's ever been before, let's not burn a bunch of fuel if we don't have to 15 times a year. We'll just call it a night and say, hey, Kike, go get him.
I know we don't use this phrase in baseball that often, but what you just described is load management.
Yes, it's exactly right. I think later on in the chat, somebody brought that up, and somebody did bring that up. Now, again, it's not to say that this is a strategy without some potential ramifications, because I asked, these are baseball people, and we talked about wasting bullets, all that sort of stuff, trying to be cutting edge and the like. But I did say, well, hold on now. Is there any downside of this? Because, if you're the Sours guy's agent, are you like, you just sacrificed my guy to just bail on a game? And if you're Kike Hernandez and like, all of a sudden your elbow starts hurting because you pitched 2 innings in a baseball game.
He threw an 86-mile-an-hour pitch, Darren.
like, is there any potential downside to this? And it's like, yeah, who knows? But this is the sort of thing that some people will say is gamesmanship. Some people will say is dirty pool. Some people will say and credit the Dodgers and say it's cutting edge. Like it's sort of like a cutting edge type of approach. I don't know. I don't know how all of this sort of stuff is being viewed in the context of what it is that we just saw here when we did see the Dodgers walk out of town having won 2 out of 3.
I bet Manny Machado has opinions on load management in baseball, the man who freaking posts every day, even when he's not healthy. Look, it's one of those things that like you would love to look at them and be like, that's fucking stupid. That's going to destroy their team and the morale. And how are you giving games away when, unless you're 15 games up in the division? They got a ring. They got 2. Not that I really count the 2020 ring, but they got 2 under Dave Roberts. Like, they're kind of at the point where you can't totally disregard what they're doing, even if it seems crazy or upside down. I don't really buy the Dodgers won game 3 because they did that in game 2. I understand that their bullpen was, I guess, a little bit more rested because Matt Sauer paid for the sins of their team. But I look at this and go I feel like they could have done that anyway.
Yeah, maybe because it seems like the Padres. Now we can just go in on the Padres.
Yeah,
even reading some of the post game quotes from Schilt, or if you stuck around and watched the post game press conference or whatever. Can I just say, as a quick aside, my wife's flight got delayed yesterday, and I went and picked her up at the airport at 4:50. So that game had ended about an hour earlier or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whatever time the game ended, I don't remember. And I outsmarted myself because I was like, picking her up at the airport at 5 o'clock, I'm going to skip the 5 heading south. And I'm just going to go Harbor Drive because I'm going to go over the Coronado Bridge, going to go to this grocery store. Downtown was impossible to navigate at 5 o'clock yesterday. And when I tell you, John, that I spent an hour plus in my vehicle in downtown San Diego trying to navigate my way through whatever street was available to me to get back to the freeway, which was a plan that I originally decided to forfeit. I don't know how anybody else stuck in this god-awful traffic in downtown San Diego. I will never, and I mean ever, find myself in a vehicle at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in downtown San Diego again. Okay.
I mean, not after a Padres-Dodgers game, that's for sure.
It was, I've never, ever, I used to live there. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Again, why was it an afternoon game? Your evening would have been so much more pleasant had they just started this game at 6:40.
It was such a great plan. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go right down Harbor, and then I'm going to cut up Logan. You know, this is going to be great. And no. And then, I made at least 3 U-turns on random streets in downtown San Diego just trying to get back to the fucking freeway. All right. What was I saying? So the Padres, like, it's an interesting thing because afterwards, if you stuck around and you watch this is where I was going with it.
Yeah.
Schultz sort of like, hey, like, our plan, like we had our plan and our plan worked. And I'm like, oh, what was the plan? Well, the plan was we're going to use Randy Vasquez only 2 times through the lineup. And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, like, that's not a plan. That's a script. You know what I mean? Like that's not a plan.
Yeah, right.
That is you're like, you scripted this game out to the point where you were going to use Randy Vasquez only 2 times through the lineup. And I just think like, well, maybe there's some reasons that you would take him out. Maybe there's some statistics there. I haven't looked it up that Vasquez isn't any good 3rd time through the order. And oh, by the way, you're also facing Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman for a 3rd time. And that could be dangerous. But it's also regular season. I thought Vasquez was throwing the ball pretty well, and he'd only thrown 70 pitches. He gave up a home run to Conforto, which, as bad as Conforto's been, it isn't the most cardinal sin. But then he's like, well, we did everything that we thought we were going to do. It just doesn't work out. And there's a fielding play and then, a home run from Teoscar Hernandez. And I just was like, okay, I guess. What did you think of that?
Here's the thing. I look at that statement that like we're so afraid of Randy Vasquez going facing a batter for the 3rd time, and to your point, that's not a plan. That's a script. If you're gonna make a script to go around that, what you do is you start with an opener. You start with an opener that can take on Ohtani, Betts, Freddie Freeman, maybe Will Smith. That way, when Randy Vasquez comes in, even when he gets to the lineup for the 3rd time, he's facing Max Muncy, Pages, Conforto, and it's a little bit easier. Like, those guys aren't going to completely crush you, and then maybe you can get, instead of 4 innings from Vasquez, maybe you can get 5. Maybe you can get 5 1/3. Like, if that's going to be your thing, that we don't want Vasquez going through the order 3 times, and we're absolutely terrified of the idea of Shohei Ohtani seeing him for a 3rd time or Mookie Betts seeing him for a 3rd time, then you make a plan around that. You don't just say, oh, when he hits this batter, he's done. That's stupid. And that is not trying to find any sort of advantages at all with your managing. That's literally just saying, we have a weakness and we need to avoid it. Find a strength.
Yeah, and it sounds like second guessing, obviously, but it's more based just on how it was framed and how it was explained afterwards. Like I can objectively say I think Randy Vasquez facing the Dodgers for a 3rd time is something that you might want to avoid. But as he said, hey, my bullpen's really, really rested. I feel like we've also had bigger picture conversations about how the bullpen is being overused. So is the bullpen rested or is the bullpen being overused?
It feels like because they had one day where they didn't have to burn through the bullpen. All of a sudden they're rested. Like, yeah,
right. Yeah, Dylan Cease, like he absolutely just, and again, it was good to get those guys some days, like a day off. But, even still, we talk about it being big picture that the bullpen is throwing too many innings. And if that's the case, if ever there's a time, like at what point do you want to find out maybe if Randy Vasquez can do something that's a little bit out of character? I don't know. Maybe that was the situation for it. I find myself rooting for him, not second guessing the manager, but more rooting for Vasquez to see maybe he can do it. I don't know. Like maybe maybe this is an opportunity to try to find out, since we're all pretending that it's just a regular season series.
He's a better pitcher now than he was at the beginning of the season. And he was a better pitcher in the beginning of the season than he was last year. He's getting better. Like to your point, every so often you got to try the thing that you're afraid that Randy Vasquez might, it might explode if he touches it. Every so often you got to let him touch it and find out. Is that still true, or has he reached the point where we're going to let him throw 100 pitches in a game? Because I'm sick and fucking tired of Mike Schilt pulling guys in the 4th inning or the 5th inning before they've even, there's 70 pitches. I literally tried, I don't trust this, so I'm not going to quote it. I tried to get ChatGPT to look through yesterday. I wanted to figure out the average number of pitchers thrown by a starter before they're pulled and how the Padres compare. And what ChatGPT told me is that it's at an all-time low, the number of pitchers a starter throws before he gets pulled, and it's at 85, 86 pitches, and that the Padres are actually on the high end. They're at 93 before they pull him, and I was like, that sounds like bullshit to me. I'm not going to trust that at all. But I'm intrigued enough because Schilt just keeps pulling guys at 70, 75 pitches, and I get that he trusts his bullpen. But if you lean on your bullpen every day, they're going to run out of gas. And they're going to run out of gas way before the playoffs start.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking here at the chart on Baseball Savant, and there were some hard-hit balls off him. There's no doubt about it. I think as I'm looking here, he had the most hard-hit balls off him in the game. I don't know. It's still 70 pitches, and I feel like it's just part of Vasquez. But, then you go to Morihona and Estrada. Obviously, Estrada's the one who gives up the big homer. Yuki Matsui, Jason Adamwandi, Peralta, David Morgan end up pitching in this game. So, and I mean, I guess that's fair. I guess it's fair that it was coming off the bat pretty good. I'm just trying to see who it was here. It won't give me that, but 70 pitches is just not a lot. But I guess that's what it is with him. Listen, I thought the Padres had opportunities here. I thought the Fernando Tatis Jr. at bat in the 2nd inning with the bases loaded was one where you sort of, scratch your head a little bit. I know I was going back and forth a little bit on Discord about Manny's at bat with the bases loaded. Let me just say, explicitly, I trust Manny Machado with the bases loaded. I trust Manny Machado on a 3-0 count.
Right.
I trust Manny Machado with the bases loaded and a 3-0 count against the lefty. I mean, I trust him 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, 365 days, all the time. I just don't think, I always remember too, and I always remember something that I heard from Flannery about swinging with the bases loaded. If you're going to swing 3-0, it's fine. Manny's got 12 grand slams. I mean, this guy's, I think maybe the active leader, if not one of the top 2 or 3 in baseball.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But I always remember Tony saying, if you're going to swing 3-0, what you do is you zoom in on something the size of a CD box. Okay. Yes, yeah. This is a boomer reference here, but if you're gonna do that, you zoom in, this is the pitch I'm gonna wait for. I think he's gonna throw me a fastball. I think he's gonna throw it in.
Yeah.
And I don't think that swing and that pitch location added up. And it's okay. Listen, it happens. It just I think Manny thought he was gonna get something to pull there, and instead it was outside. I'm fine with Manny swinging at an outside pitch because I've seen him go oppo a million times.
Right.
He can do it as well as anybody. It just felt like something was a little off on that. I don't know if he expected something different, but to me, I just had that voice in my head of Tony being you just zoom in. This is it. I'm only going to swing here because the pressure's on the pitcher right now. At 3-0, bases loaded, the pressure is on the pitcher. And let's not take Luis Ariz off the hook either, because he had an at-bat with 1 out that was probably worse. I'm surprised because the expectation for me of Manny is that he's going to come through in that situation. And it just felt like maybe he got a little bit tricked, or maybe he decided, 3-0, fuck it, I'm going for it here, and I'm going to pull the trigger no matter what. And he ends up trying to pull something, and he just rolled over to third.
Yeah. And look, we don't really want to do post-game stuff, but this is somewhat important because the next 7 games the Padres play are 3 on the road against the Diamondbacks and 4 on the road against the Dodgers. This is a time when the pressure is being turned up, and you got to figure out who you are, and if you're not ready, you got to find a way to get better. And I'm not going to say that the stuff on Padres.com is run through the Padres front office before they hit publish. That's not the case. But I do think, they'll shy away from some big, or at least they'll wait and make sure that any criticisms are verified in some way, right? It's not a hot take machine over at Padres.com. And there's an article on Padres.com that AJ Cassavell wrote after this game, and then he tweeted it out this morning with, the Padres need to trade for a bat, and they need to do it sooner rather than later. And today's an off day. A lot of times off day is when you see those types of transactions. It's not quite July yet, but sometimes AJ Preller will move quickly on these things. I'm at the point where I'm like, I would almost be surprised to not see the Padres make a trade in the next week. Like, and I'm not going to say it's going to be today, but I do think if they lose the series against Diamondbacks and it's like, man, if only we had a decent hitter in left field or a catcher who could hit more than 200. And then they got 4 in LA against the Dodgers. And in theory, like, some of their guys are going to be back then. Like, Blake Snell might be back. I don't think Glasnow's back, although there's a weird thing where he's like kind of fighting with the team where he's like, I'm healthy. And they're like, no, you're not. Tony Gonsolin might be back, I think. Like, they're going to get healthier in the next week or so. And the Padres, I mean, I guess in theory, like, Darvish is going to Phoenix with the team. He's going to go throw at the team facility, but he's more than a week away. King is more than a week away. Like, I think the next week is going to be like, the Padres are going to be under a magnifying glass, and their issues are just going to be like, holy shit, I don't think they can compete with these other teams in the NL West. They couldn't put the Giants away. They couldn't put the Dodgers away. And now it's going to be the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers again. And I think that's just going to keep turning the heat up, the pressure up. And I think AJ Preller is gonna do something. And look, Luis Arraez, who you just mentioned, I put a link to an article on Fangraphs that came out yesterday in the newsletter this morning. He's bad right now. And they basically pointed out a similar thing to Dylan from Letters to AJ, which is like, Luis Arraez makes contact with everything. And that's why it's kind of okay that his like ability to take balls and or his ability to swing at balls and hit them is really important, and his ability to take walks is less important. But he's not barreling anything anymore. He's not making good contact anymore. He's just making contact. So I think first base is a bit of a problem. I think left field is a bit of a problem. I think catcher is a bit of a problem. And I think the time that the Padres have to figure that out on their own without, giving up prospect capital to try and fix those mistakes before the postseason gets closer. I see a trade coming, Darren.
All right. Well, John has looked into his crystal ball. He sees a trade coming. MLB insider John Gennaro.
Well, once AJ Cassavell starts saying it, it's kind of hard to be like, nah, they're fine. Like AJ doesn't really say like they need to make a trade until it's pretty obvious that they need to make a trade. Yeah.
I sort of, after watching it a little bit, even knowing that Darvish is coming back, I don't know that this was an example of like a measuring stick series, because the Dodgers seemed like they were all out of sorts too, right? Like nobody really had anything. Like these are not the teams that we saw in the postseason last year, right? Like even though the Dodgers pitching was in shambles last October, but you know what I'm saying? Like they've got just a bunch of dudes who are kind of on the shelf right now, to the point where you're almost suspicious of what their motivation is. Yeah. And the Padres are waiting for certain guys. But I sort of looked and was like, I don't know, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Is this going to be good enough for this team? And I'm not sure what the answer is. Now again, it's still good. I still think it's probably good enough to get you to the postseason. But it's also June 12th, so why don't we cool our jets on that one a little bit?
Yeah. Can we talk about the NBA?
Yeah. I do want to talk about the NBA, actually, for a second. I just want to see, did I have any other final thoughts here? Did you see Marty's Manny Machado post-game
interview
session? Yeah.
Not all of it. I saw some of it.
That was pretty funny. I mean, like, the second question was like, hey, what are you doing for Father's Day? Like, after the game, they just lost to the Dodgers. And it's like, and I get it. I think it was one of the TV guys in there. But her last question, because, of course, Marty's going to try to, poke a stick into the hornet's nest. She's like, Dave Roberts said what happened in, last year during the postseason. Like he's got nothing but love for you. And Manny's like, what are you talking about? It was actually a funny moment. Marty's like, last year with the baseball, like throwing the baseball at the dugout. And Manny looks at her and he's like, are you still talking about that? It's so funny. It was really, really a funny moment for Manny because you can tell Marty's like, I'll take a shot here. Let me see if I can whip something up and create a moment from last year's controversy. And Dave and Manny did not understand the question. He's like, what? I'm sorry. And then Marty's sort of off mic. She's like, oh, Dave said, he hasn't spoken to you since last year, since the playoffs with the baseball thing. And was it overhyped? And Manny looks at her. He's like, are you still talking about that?
Like 9 months ago.
And she's like, well, I'm just and he's like, no, you're still talking about that, aren't you? And he's like, I'm going to go enjoy an off day. Peace out. All right. We got a series. We do have a series, right? Pacers up 2-1. Now, I would remind everybody here real quick that this is not completely foreign territory for the Oklahoma City Thunder because they were down 2-1 to Denver. They won Game 4. They won Game 5. Denver won Game 6. Oklahoma City won Game 7. So, they have not just traipsed through the postseason here. They have been tested before. So this is not unfamiliar territory, but it is unfamiliar because they're 2 losses, I should say, from their season ending. They were previously, but it's not like they haven't been here before in headspace. I thought this was a really good game, and I'm glad that the Pacers have made this a series. I really am. I think that was one of the questions that people had. Wasn't who was going to win, but could this be a series? And now we know it's at least 6, and I think there's reason to believe it's going to be 7. So this one is for people who were excited to see the series, John. I think they're getting rewarded with what we've seen thus far, knowing that we at least have a 6-game series in the NBA Finals. Yeah, I mean, it could be still 5. I don't think it's going to be 5. You know what I'm saying?
No. I mean, it could be. I was looking at the
I think Oklahoma City will win another game.
Probably, but I was looking at the 2011 NBA Finals when Rick Carlisle coached the Dallas Mavericks to win a title over the LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh Miami Heat team in their first year when everyone was like, they're so dominant, you can't beat them. And the Mavericks did. And I was wondering if the Mavericks went up 2-1. I wondered if it was following a similar playbook. And no, in fact, the Heat went up 2-1. And then the Mavericks won the next 3 games in a row to win the series 4-2 in 6 games. So, it can kind of go both ways. But I was remembering when we talked to Vinny Goodwill, and he was basically explaining, Rick Carlisle is one of the 10 best coaches in the history of the NBA. And really good coaching can win you a game in the playoffs. And here's the thing, we've gotten so used to over the last, 40 years, starting with Bird and Magic and then going into Michael Jordan and then going into Shaq and then going into LeBron. We have had decades and decades in the NBA where you got to this part of the playoffs and the best players were winning these games, right? They were taking over and they were winning these games. And these are 2 teams that are very, very much built on youth, energy, depth, and coaching. There's almost no one in this series that's going to throw the game on their back and be like, I'm taking this one over. I'm winning the game for us. And because of that, I think the coaching aspect is much more important. I think the coaching aspect can win you more than a game. I think the coaching aspect, if it's good enough, can potentially win you a series. And I'm not saying Rick Carlisle's coaching circles around Mark Daigneault. I think he's the better coach right now, but I think Daigneault has mostly held his own. But after game 1, we were sitting here going, hey, there it is. The Pacers stole one. That's the game that the coaching won. And it's no, Indiana looked every bit as good as Oklahoma City in Game 3. And I'm glad. Going into the series, I was listening and reading everyone saying, the Thunder are so much better. They're so much better. They're so much better. And I was like, I think over the course of the season that was true, that Oklahoma City was so much better than Indiana. But right now, the basketball they're playing right now, I think these teams are very evenly matched. And what I saw in Game 3, and I'm sorry if this brings up the Knicks, who are just a funnel of bad news right now.
The group chat is
yeah, it's terrible. Although yesterday when they reached out for Quinn Snyder, the 5th currently employed head coach that they've reached out and asked if they could interview, and they were told defiantly no. I saw someone I followed just retweeted it, said this is becoming a great bit. And it's true. It's becoming an absolutely great fit. I also saw a thing this morning that was like, should the Knicks consider Johnny Bryant? And I was like, oh, we're right back to where we started.
I saw one this morning that said that should they consider Chris Paul?
I mean, honestly, probably yes. That would be interesting, and he might be good at it. But I saw the Pacers doing last night what they did to the Knicks. And it felt very similar in that they just went, okay, we're going to build our defense where your best players have to do it on their own, right? We're going to force SGA and maybe even Jalen Williams to win like a one-on-one matchup in ISO because everyone else is going to be covered and we're going to switch and there's not going to be the ability to pass the ball around and find the open shooter and he hits a three. Like you have to beat your matchup, like really in your face, physical, one-on-one, strong man defense to the point that a lot of people didn't actually know that the Pacers could do that. And what happened? Like the OKC offense looked like the Knicks offense for large portions of that game where it was just like, where's the creativity? Run a fucking play. And it was just like, no, like one of these two guys would get the ball. They would try and beat their isolation matchup and they would go into a crowd in the lane and it would, either it would get blocked or they would get fouled or it was a very difficult contested shot, even out on the perimeter. There was no open shots for OKC and their offense got very, very stagnant. And I was like, maybe this is just what the Pacers do, man. They just force you to do the thing that you don't want to do, and they slowly but surely suffocate you. Or I guess at the end of game one, they quickly but surely suffocate you. But offensively, these teams are a match for one another, and game three was like, Indiana might be as good defensively right now. Right now. They might not be as good of a basketball team. This isn't like the start of a dynasty, but right now they're playing as good of basketball as the Thunder.
And the other thing I think that was pointed to as a clear advantage for Oklahoma City was their depth, right, and their bench. And I know a lot's been made of the bench scoring from Game 3. But when you look at, Mathurin, who scored 27, part of the Knicks group chat was about Obi Toppin last night, who only had 8, but played really well. Like, he had some impactful points late down the stretch. He was trusted in a close game in that fourth quarter and had some put-away shots. I mean, the conversation was, would we be happier for Obi Toppin or Hartenstein? I never felt like Obi Toppin even got a chance.
He didn't. And then they gave him away. Like they gave him away for I think like a second round draft picks. Yeah, they gave him away.
I know, and I feel like that's like a Tibbs indictment.
It was because
he just didn't want to play this guy for whatever reason. And I'm not trying to make him out to be an all-star. I mean, he's not.
No, but Toppin doesn't play defense. He's a one-dimensional player. He's going to be a chaos engine on offense. He can get rebounds. He can score. He can shoot a little bit. And then on defense, he's weak. And the Knicks and Tibbs were just like, we're not playing any players that are weak on defense. And that's fair.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. And I understand all of that. And at a time, I probably was like, yeah, okay. But, he also is capable of doing things, that other guys on that team are not.
Useful player.
He's a useful player. And the bench really last night was I don't know what the final tally was, but 27-10, 37-41. They scored almost 50 points in the game. I think, if I have that right, 27-37. 41, yeah, almost 50. Yeah. And Oklahoma City's bench scored 14, 18. So, for what was a decided strength for Oklahoma City Thunder, I think the point is, John, whether you're talking about defense or bench scoring or whatever, the teams are a lot closer in talent, I think, than maybe the way this series was previewed. And when you have an advantage, I think we would agree, in coaching with somebody like Rick Carlisle, now all of a sudden, the case is clearly being made that, the Pacers aren't just showing up in this series to crown the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're really good. I know we're up against it here with our Reddit AMA, so we have only a couple of more minutes. I will say, and I don't like feeding into this because I don't think it's important, but I will say, just as somebody who watched this broadcast last night, I understand the people that are complaining about the broadcast that it doesn't feel like the NBA Finals. No,
it's from the. I agree with the people who complained about there's no NBA Finals on the court, and I'm like, yeah, that did make, you watch old Finals things, you see the logo on the court, and you're like, oh yeah, remember that? That made it feel special and different. So that's part of it, and they've tried to do the thing where they use the green screen thing and put the trophy on the court. It just looks stupid and it doesn't look right. So that part of the broadcast is stupid. And then Breen is doing what he can.
He's trying.
but it's a real rough broadcast.
It's
and
rough.
And like I really do enjoy Richard Jefferson as a personality, but he's bad at this. He's bad at the calling games part of it, and Doris Burke can't really figure out what her lane's supposed to be between the two of them, and it's not a good look. It's not a good look for ESPN.
Yeah, I mean Doris. Hold on, Doris was hired as a tandem with Doc Rivers.
Yeah,
And I thought they had a good thing going early in this year. And then Doc is like, all right, well, I'm going to go coach the Bucks now. And even like the side, I don't have anything. I mean, Jorge Sedano's been nice to me in person, but I feel like I'm watching a Tuesday night game one of a doubleheader between Atlanta and Charlotte.
Yeah, the only thing that makes you realize it's the finals is the crowd going like absolutely apeshit. But
there's got to be some heavyweights in broadcasting that contribute to this telecast. I don't know. It's not the most important thing.
I saw Barkley he was on the post game for like NBA TV, and I'm like, he practically works for ESPN starting next season. Like, you can't have Barkley on your, and then the halftime show with like Stephen A. and Kendrick Perkins, and I don't know if you saw the pregame show was all about how literally they spent multiple segments talking about the fact that the Pacers had put a hype video on social media that included all their doubters, right? Everyone who doubted them, including Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins. And they're like, do you boys want to reply to the Pacers putting you in their video and calling you a hater that they're going to... And it's like, what are we doing? What? I don't give a shit about what Stephen A. Smith thinks about being in a Pacers hype video. I don't. I'm here to watch a basketball game. Can you tell me what I should be looking for? What I should be expecting? The interesting narratives and storylines going into this? Like, during the broadcast, at least when TJ McConnell was doing his like little run in the third quarter, they start talking about TJ's sister. She plays for the Phoenix Mercury, and his dad was there. And they were like, oh, we talked to TJ about how his dad coached his sister softer than he coached TJ. And I was like, just do this. This is your pregame. This is your. I'm over ESPN with basketball.
I saw the one clip that Awful Announcing posted, and again, it's a site I have some issues with from time to time. But they did post this clip from halftime of Game 2 of Bob Myers, Kendrick Perkins, and Stephen A. Smith, like literally just yelling at one another for about 30 seconds. Like, you couldn't understand anything that anybody was saying. It just was this clip of these three. It's like halftime of the NBA Finals, of Game 2 of the NBA Finals.
They don't care.
There's just people yelling over one another, and it's like, whoa, okay, that's bad. Like, I understand maybe there's some good stuff there that these guys have done, but and you're seeking out this moment, maybe this very brief moment of an hour plus of broadcasting that is disruptive, but again, perception sometimes becomes the reality. All right, we'll end it on that note. How do I sign into this Reddit stuff? I haven't used a Reddit account in forever.
Well, you said you signed into Reddit yesterday, so just go click on the thing I sent you to go to the thing, and then if you're not signed in, sign in. You might need to be like, I forgot my password, and sign in that way. But once you're signed in, you're fine.
All right, we'll be back at it on Friday. Thank you, everybody, for.
Hey, wait, are we going to Mason Ale Works tomorrow?
It's a great question, John. Let's talk about it off the air.
Okay.